Well, thank you everybody for joining me. My hostess from Familius, Jaden's having some technical difficulties, but since everybody's here on time, I'll go ahead and get started with my presentation. Wait just a second. Let me, oops. I've lost everybody. Just a second here. Go back here. And no. I'm going to have to get restarted, I believe. I'm sorry. I've lost my video. So I will check out and I'll start again. Please be patient. We'll get this all figured out. And paste and oh, there we are. Sorry. Okay. So Jaden, I think you'll need to let me share the screen. Okay, there we go. And let's go with Heng here. Let's share. All right, hold on. Let me get restarted again. And slideshow. Here we go. Well, I'm really excited to be with you today. I'm honored and pleased to be with the School Library Journal's Day of Dialogue and share with you my new book with Familius Publishers, Zhang and the Incredible Earthquake Detector. I am, let's see if we can get this going there. My name is Randel Mcgee, and in my 40+ years of career, I've been working with schools and libraries all around the world as a performer and a teaching artist. My main part of my career has been as a storyteller and ventriloquist with my puppet partner, Grork the Dragon. Our act is called Randel Mcgee and Grork. We've been able to travel all around the United States and Asia and have produced a series of videos on character education for children called Getting Along with Grork. Many years ago, I decided to diversify a bit and perform also as the storyteller Hans Christian Andersen. I picked him because as he told stories, he would make elaborate paper cut designs as he told the stories. And I was doing that for many years before I discovered Andersen. So, whoops, I share that. I've been a teaching artist. I've had a chance to teach all around the world, from Singapore to Northern Ireland, sharing my love of the arts with teachers and students. I'm an artist and illustrator. I especially like to work in cut paper designs. And I'm also an author. I've written several craft books for children based on holiday themes and seasonal themes as well. But I'm really excited to be working with the Familius Publishers with my new book, Zhang and the Incredible Earthquake Detector. Now, this story is based on a true story, but I had to, of course, fictionalize it a little bit. It was written for the 8 to 12-year-old audience, but I think it can be enjoyed on many different levels for the science, for the character education, and for the history, and hopefully also for the art of the Chinese shadow puppetry. Now, this story began as I was researching for a storytelling performance for one of the museums in California on earthquakes. We were doing an outreach program to 6th graders, which is one of the subjects that they study in California during 6th grade. And so I was researching all kinds of stories of people who studied earthquakes, studied geology, and also personal stories of people who had been in earthquakes, including myself. And that's when I discovered the story of Zhang Heng, a brilliant Chinese scientist, mathematician. He was a poet, a writer, and an inventor, and a follower of Confucius, which meant that he had very high moral standards and character principles that he followed. About this time, I also had a chance to work and perform in Taichung, Taiwan, and there I got to see an actual model of the device that's featured in the story. Was Mr. Depp with you when you had the baby? I thought that this was a story that needed to be told. It's a strongly principled character with a lot of talent. It's got a historical setting, a lot of political intrigue, an important, difficult challenge that needed to be solved. And he was persevering through all kinds of disappointments and setbacks and came to a positive resolution. And what better story than that, huh? Now, there we go, sorry about that. Because it's set in ancient China and because I am a puppeteer, I just thought that this would be a great way of sharing this story with this uniquely Chinese art form. And it's got a very bright visual impact with the puppets and the scenes. So that's how I decided to tell this. Also, because they are puppets with articulated arms and body parts, I could use the same figures over and over again as I told the story in the different scenes. So it was somewhat of a time-saving move too. Yeah, I'm sorry that there we go. So here are some traditional Chinese shadow figures. You'll notice that they are very intricately cut. All of the white that you see is cut out of very thin leather that's translucent. They paint them with very brilliant dyes. And then the arms and some of the parts of the body, like the waist, are jointed so that the figures can be moved. For my research and my inspirations, I used basically these three books. The Art of Chinese Paper Cuts and the Chinese Shadow Puppet Plays were gifts from my in-laws who taught in Shanghai. So those were very accurate. And so I used a lot of the characters from those two books for some of the characters in my story. So does this guy look familiar with the big bushy eyebrows and the beard? Or the young lady with the beautiful flowers in her hair and the long ponytail or braid? To make the puppets, I used just 50-pound test drawing paper. I sketched out the designs. I colored them in with watercolor crayons. These are blendable. So once you've got that down, I just used a very moist brush to go through and add or blend the colors and smooth them out. Fine tip watercolor brush pens were used for all the fine lines and details. And I used a sharp knife and scissors to cut out all of the designs. This was one of the borders that I had made for the book. And unfortunately, my borders weren't used in the final book, but the other things were. All of these characters were laid out on a light table and photographed from above. This was in my workshop in California, and a very talented photographer, Joe Whittington, braved my makeshift scaffold to take pictures of the different characters, and very sensitive pad. And this was the finished scene. So all of the white lines that you see were cut with the knife and scissors. So I'm really excited about the book, and I leave it open to you if you have any questions that you might like to ask.
Can you hear me now?
Ah, yes. Hi.
Thank goodness. Okay, sorry about that.
No problem.
There we go. Yeah, just so everybody knows, I just want to make everybody aware before we get into questions. Here's the lovely book. It's super beautiful. Here it is in person. And so everybody knows, you can visit familius.com. And if you look up Randel's name or you look up the book title, it'll be right there. There are also educational materials in our booth, as well as on Edelweiss. And if you have any questions about the book, you can feel free to message or email me. My name is Jaden at familius.com, or that's my email. So if you need any additional resources, whatnot, oh yeah, and our lovely social media marketing associate just sent in our link to purchase. So there's that. But again, if you need any additional resources for your classroom, reach out to me. Randel is happy to create things as well. So if there are any needs out there, we can get it sorted. Yeah, so does anybody have any questions?
I appreciate everybody joining in.
I actually have some questions for you.
Thanks.
I don't have time to read all of our books, but I did get a chance to read this one, and it was lovely. What inspired you? Or I know that so if you weren't aware, Randel does all sorts of puppetry, not just Chinese puppetry. But I'm curious as to what drew you to the art of Chinese puppetry. What do you like about it? How is it different from the other forms of puppetry you do in your life?
I've always been attracted to shadow puppets, both just the black silhouette kind, but especially the Chinese style shadow puppets, because of the translucent materials that they used and the brilliant colors that they could achieve to add, life and character to the puppets. And as I mentioned, because this is a story from ancient China, I just thought, oh, I could tell this story with that style of puppetry, of Chinese shadow puppetry. And so, like, I have one of the characters here. Try not to get too much glow off of it. In fact, I've got a little flashlight here. But for example, just when there's a bright light behind it, the colors just seem to glow, and you see all the details. And they said this character had interchangeable heads, so I could change its expression. And that was another thing I really enjoyed, is that you can change some of the pieces, and change the hands or the heads to fit the different moods. And that's what they do in Chinese shadow puppetry. So I hope that answers some of your questions.
Yeah, it definitely does. Randel, so yeah, Randel, as he was explaining earlier, he did all the illustrations in this book, and they were actually really interesting it was super interesting to look at the progress, because they're taking these shots from all the way up there, and Randel's cutting out really precise details. So if you have a chance to look inside this book, I would highly recommend it. There's so much. I can show it off real quick. He was showing off some of the characters. And there they are, and there's so much detail in every page. I mean,
I also, this is the original earthquake device shadow puppet that I made. I'll see if I can highlight that a little bit. You can see maybe some of the detail that goes into the Chinese shadow puppetry, just cutting out the little shapes to add texture and I don't know, movement to the puppet.
We have a question from our own social media marketing associate. She wants to know, how long do these puppets take to create?
Thanks, Adina. That depends on the puppet. Some of them I didn't add as much detail, but from the first sketches to the final puppet would probably take a couple hours, depending on the detail. Some of the cuttings are more detailed. I got to be pretty quick with my little knife and scissors, but Yeah, probably this one would have taken 2 or 3 hours from drawing to, well, I'm not even taking into consideration the painting of it. So maybe 5 or 6 hours once you get it painted and then cut. And I don't know if other artists do, but I tried to keep track of my time and just, you know, when you're creating something, time seems to slip away.
This is definitely a passion project. I mean, Randel really poured his heart and soul into this one. I actually have a question about the main character in the book. What do you think children can take away from his demeanor and his perseverance? What do you hope that kids learn about him and from him?
Thanks. I think that's a great question. In my studies, I really came to admire Zhang because he was a person with great moral principles. And he was not concerned about all of the political things that were going on around him. He just wanted to create. He just wanted to do what he wanted to do. And he was very honest. He was very forthright and creative. So I think as we read this story, we can point out to the children, see, he was a good guy. He didn't need to you know, cheat or you know, lie or get, you know, to move ahead. He just did what he did, and he did it well. So I think that's one of the lessons we can learn. That's one of the things that I admired about him. It was pointed out in several of the biographies that I read about him, was that he just wanted to create and help people and didn't care too much about fame and glory. Just do what you do and do it right.
Right, and that's such a contrast to some of the king's advisors in here who are all about fame and all about glory. And so he really sticks out as a really good protagonist and a great example to kids. I think the other thing I'd like to add is, not to answer my own question, but the creativity aspect is really important too. You had some pictures come in from some friends about some earthquake machines. Talk to us about the sort of designs that you've seen kids make from this, and all the projects you've seen come from this book.
Thanks. Yeah, some of my friends who I had given the book to, their grandchildren had put together an earthquake machine, and it was also a cat toy or something like that for their kids. But I think that this could inspire, and in some of my handouts, my worksheet that you have there available for teachers and librarians, there are some different projects that I found online that I thought were really good for making things that detect motion, air motion with, you know, windmills, pinwheels, water or sand with, you know, little water wheels that they could make. But then also there's an earthquake detecting device that they could make themselves that was shared by Scientific American. So yeah, and then you can just kind of create your own little devices. As I was working on the book, there is a page there, let me see, where the Zhang Heng is trying out all kinds of models of what might work to detect an earthquake. And so I was trying to think, okay, what kind of devices would you make? Maybe balancing things, you know, and having them fall in one direction, or pendulums that could swing, or like this thing right here is like a dome with little balls around it. And I thought maybe if it, you know, an earthquake could shake and the balls could fall in almost like a little roulette wheel on the bottom there, so that you knew which direction it came from. So yeah, I kind of created some of my own devices, and I think anybody else should have a chance to try and create their own.
Yeah, like Randel was saying, in his educational materials, there's a ton of great activities in there for kids. Randall's also coming out with some articles for our blog that talk about how you can bring shadow puppetry into your home. And Randel has a fantastic YouTube channel that features some of his older, not related to this book, but just generally, if you want to learn about shadow puppetry, His YouTube has some really cool examples of things you can do with your students or with your kids. Yeah, they have really cool projects. What's the name of that channel again?
Of what, my channel?
Yeah, your YouTube channel, is it just Mcgee Productions?
It's our Mcgee Productions, all one word. There's actually quite a few Mcgee Productions I've discovered out there, different companies doing different things. But mine on YouTube was R for my first name, Randel, Mcgee Productions. It's all one word, R Mcgee Productions.
And then Randel is also a performer, as he mentioned in his presentation. So if you are interested in this book for your classroom or for your students, Randel also does school visits as well. And his visits are on YouTube if you want examples of them. I've watched through them. They are extremely entertaining and had me laughing. Love the Anderson ones, the Hans Christian Andersen ones. Those ones are funny too. But he can also do demonstrations with this book as well. So it's really a full package deal. If you're interested in this book, he can come in as well. And there's also, the great thing about this book is it really is built for libraries and classrooms. There's historical information in the back that you can teach your kids about. And so the last thing I'd like to ask you about is, can you talk to us about your interpretation of this? Because I know that the history behind it is kind of vague, and that the story of how this machine came about is, convoluted, and there's many answers there. What's the difference between your interpretation and what is factual in history?
Okay. What's factual was that he did serve under basically two emperors. There was Anti and Shundi, a father and son. And Shundi was a young emperor. He was a kind person, but he didn't choose people very well to help him. And so there was a lot of political intrigue in the court. So those are true facts. He did commission, Shundi did commission Zhang to build an earthquake device. The fictional parts, I guess, would be the dragon dream. I just thought, how would somebody come up with such a inspired idea and then create this egg with dragons on it looking device? And so that is fictional. I am kind of partial to dragons, and that's because that's my partner in my performances is a dragon. And so I have a large dragon collection, but so I thought, yeah, I wanted to tie it in with some dragons in there. And what else? Apparently there was, the device did work as it's explained in the program. There was an earthquake. It was to the northwest and was in the city of Longxi. And it took days for somebody to come from Longxi to announce that the earthquake had happened. So that part is true. And then of course they sent supplies out to help them. And so I guess the real fictional part would be the dragon dream and all the little conversations behind the scenes.
Right. And I mean, that's normal for us to have to interpret it because obviously we don't know the exact conversations or how it came about.
About 2,000 years ago, right?
Yeah. Remind me again what your dragon's name is?
Oh, my dragon's name is Grork.
I knew it was something like that. Yeah, Grork is a really fun character that Randel brings along. And then it also makes sense, though, that dragons are featured so predominantly in Chinese literature in general and history because of the Chinese
art,
zodiac. Right? Oh, sorry.
And in their art. When I was in Taiwan, you couldn't look in any direction without seeing a dragon of some sort. So
right, yeah. And it's in part, yeah, the Chinese zodiac. So it does make sense as to why they're so predominant. I want to give a chance to anybody to ask any last minute questions before we wrap up. We are at time. So I just want to respect Randall's time. Does anybody have any questions?